selected one question already, so for any panelist, but it ties in with what Jane was just talking about, and so maybe you want to elaborate a little bit. Let me read the question. Bill Gates Foundation was instrumental in funding Common Core. Is it true that all programs used in Common Core will be from his company, and all programming in the industries the students will be channeled to? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All that?
I don't think it's the only organization, certainly. There's a lot of pay-to-play players here at Common Core. It's a place du jour. You can pick at Pearson, I'm sure. I'm Pearson and the other, what's the other? Pearson, I forget the other assessment group. What's the other assessment?
Well, if you're talking about curriculum and you're talking about technicals, Pearson is the largest provider right now, and they were involved in the Common Core standards, and they're going to make out from the Common Core standards because now, you see it in the textbooks. You go look and you're going to see that Pearson.
Who's Pearson?
Pearson is the organization and it's a company. Yes. So, but you're going to see that, and yeah, they bought up some of the companies, and so I think if you're talking about strictly the materials, the textbooks, you're going to see primarily Pearson.
Right.
I think what the confusion about Bill Gates would be more about the technology to deliver the technology to, the tests that the kids will be taking are going to be computerized. The technology, they're selling a lot of technology. Interestingly enough, I read an article where the guys out in California, the tech guys, put their kids in schools that don't have technology because they know the power, they know the importance of academics. I mean, how many 4-year-olds pick up the iPad? They don't even know how to use it. You can't put the cart before the horse, and that's, I think, what we're saying with this. So, as far as
there should be other companies, though, other computer organizations, but there's no doubt that he has made out like a bandit, and the in-bloom is the thing that's going to continue to do so.
Pearson's also developed Smarter Valve and the other one, the PARG test. So there's two different courses. One has half the country, the other has the other. That way it's not a national assessment. When Pearson develops them all, I've got the memorandum, it's an agreement between Smarter Balance and the U.S. DOE. Anything that changes, the U.S. Department of Ed has to approve. Any data that's collected on those tests has to go quickly and immediately to the U.S. DOE.
And states are pulling out of some of these tests because they're starting to listen to what's going in New York. New York is ahead of us. They've been implementing the Common Core standards and they've been starting to test. But we heard from the psychologist that is telling you the detrimental effect. And I can tell you that I know mathematicians that have looked at the sample questions and they're looking at them going, are you kidding me? This is the kind, let me give you an example. I think this is the best example. Your child might be asked, 2 + 2 equals what? Now explain why 2 + 2 equals 4. You heard the CPA say that they can't figure out these questions. There is a Brooklyn principal that is, all of these people in New York love the idea of Common Core. This is going to be great. Until they started, the superintendents, the principals, and the teachers started looking at the questions on these tests. And I'm not opposed to testing. I don't have a problem with 2 + 2 equals what. But when you're asking us to explain why, and you're having CPAs saying, and I was hearing mathematicians, Stephen Wilson out of Johns Hopkins University, somebody I communicate with all the time, he did analysis for Fordham on Smarter Balance and said there's so much emphasis on communication skills rather than math and computation skills. This is what they're talking about. States are pulling out. Georgia just said no to the national assessment because what I'm hearing, you're setting your teachers, your schools up for failure. Do not misunderstand that. This is what I'm hearing. Teachers, this is great. We're going to teach this test, They give the test to the students, and they're getting questions like these, and they're going, this is a real problem. Read the letter from the Brooklyn, I can get it to you if you want to read it, Brooklyn principal. They're giving them these questions, the teachers are going, I don't even know the answer. If the teacher can't figure out the answer, this is why we heard from the psychologist, why CPAs are saying, CPA can't figure out the math, what they're looking for in the math answer. That's very important.
Race to the Top. 19 states got Race to the Top money. 60% of those states are now pulling back. We didn't get this Race to the Top money in New Hampshire, partly because Mayor Gatsis wasn't going to throw his teachers and principals under the bus. He has schools that don't perform well. And you see, if your schools don't perform well under Common Core and all this holy initiative, they remediate your district. They force you to do Common Core whether you like it or not. So whether you choose to or not, they've signed this agreement, this waiver, so that when you do poorly, they will label you a priority or a focus school. And it's not only the schools that get remediated, the principals, teachers, librarians, and guidance counselors, they're all evaluated based on test scores. So they get thrown under the bus. If these tests that are unverified, the kids do badly. And in New York, they went from 57% proficiency down to 31% with the introduction of their PARCC test. So all of these teachers, all these principals, they're now being evaluated poorly. So it's a huge change.
I'd just like to make one statement, and it was something that I heard at the Cornerstone event at St. Anselm's, with several of you were there, I think, for that. Just to give this some perspective that maybe some of us can relate to. Do any of you remember back in the 1950s when we had the new math? And remember what a disaster that was? Yes. Well, it was pointed out at that meeting that it's the same old, same old. It's the same people who are pushing this new tactic for the same purposes. It hasn't changed much since the 1950s. It really wasn't any good then. It really messed up a lot of kids. Those of you who were taught that new math probably never really fully recovered from it. Fortunately, I missed it, but I do remember trying to help my little brother with it. It was impossible. And this is a repeat of that same kind of thing. Let's get another question in here. Are there websites or resources available that give information about our rights to refuse the tests that are inappropriate, or that can help us fill in the educational gaps?
Well, we have the right to opt out. I think it's RSA 186 we have the right to opt out of objectionable materials and agree with, they have to have a policy in every district, so you work with the principal and they'll give you a replacement. You want a non-Common Core aligned test, maybe an Iowa Basic, something that's not aligned to the Common Core. That's the simple way to do it. The other thing is you can just refuse because this test is not valid, appropriate, or objectively scored. And there's a bill in there to say, well, we need a 2-year moratorium on this. No. If this test is bad now, it will be bad in 2 years. We don't want, we're building momentum. We've got Alton, we've got Manchester. There are more and more people coming on board. If you go on Facebook, there's a web page called Stop Common Core in New Hampshire. There's a Stop Common Core in every state. The moms are networking. We also have New Hampshire Families for Education, Facebook and website. There's a lot of information, sort of research on that page too. But we do not want a moratorium, and you can just simply refuse. There are exemptions in statute, but when the DOE wrote those exemptions in regs, they made it so like if your kid is dead, if you have 16 doctor's notes. I tried to get out of this. When she first went in, the first year she went in, she was taking AP Calc and they wanted to do it. I said, fine, but you never taught her math, so don't put this score on her transcript. Oh, we have to. I said, well then sorry, she's not taking it. So they locked her in the principal's office, wouldn't let her call home and said, you've got to take this or you're suspended. That principal.
Did that answer the question, whoever question that was?
Yeah. Do you have any guidance on filling in the gaps? I can't find any math or English on anything. I can't find what they are teaching, what they used to teach, and what they teach now. We weren't given any. Obviously, we didn't vote that in. So I have kids in the system, and I want to know what can I do, what grade to help them along. 6 and 8.
6 and 8th grade or 6 and 8 years old?
6 and 8th grade.
I think what you probably need to do is identify what's missing or the shift,
And the way to do that is you read the critiques by Professor Milgram, James Milgram. You read his critiques because there's actual concepts. Text as opposed to the great literature in fictional. There's no Sam Stotsky.
By the way, can I just make a plug for it? Dr. Sandra Stotsky is going to be giving a program on Thursday night this week in Epping at the town hall. And there are flyers that are going to table about it.
Please come. She's going to talk about, please come. She's going to talk about the process she went through. She's going to, she'll do it mostly from an English perspective. She has a very close relationship with Professor Milgram and can also talk about the math, what's missing, what you need to make sure is covered. Even from the English, we talked about the persuasion. They're focusing on persuasion. So, you might not get like different genres of literature in English, like poetry, those kind of things that you would expect from a quality English language arts curriculum, you might not be getting. Another thing to do, if you have kids in the school, go to the Core Knowledge, C-O-R-E, Knowledge website. Just Google Core Knowledge Scope and Sequence. It's grades K through 8. You can download it for free. They will give it to schools for free. Good luck finding a school that will accept it. It's very content rich, meaning that you go through there, and I'd like to see one parent stand up and say, I have a really problem with this, because it's so well founded in academics.
What is it again?
It's Core Knowledge, C-O-R-E, Core Knowledge. Strong Foundations Charter School in New Hampshire uses it. You might want to talk to them at the charter school. Yes. So Core Knowledge, I think the scope and sequence is good. You can look at the Massachusetts standards. They were ranked top in the country. When this first started, we were hoping that we would get something equivalent to the Massachusetts standards. Very content rich, very academically based, that you could everybody could get behind and support it. You don't really hear anybody trying to fight the Massachusetts standards when they were in place, because they were good. You could look, parents could look at them, what are you going to fight? Oh, my kid's learning grammar. Who's going to fight that? My kid's learning basic math. Who's going to fight that? So Core Knowledge would be a good one. Look at the Massachusetts Civics and U.S. History standards and compare that to what you will find on our New Hampshire Department of Education's website. Put it side by side, I think you will be shocked. Our proficiency level in this country in U.S. Civics and History is pathetic. Pathetic. You read the Massachusetts standards, you're going to see some quality standards. You're going to read New Hampshire's, and they're not so good.
Does that mean that they're not in Common Core?
No, that is totally separate. But they are coming out with new national standards that I'm seriously concerned about. But New Hampshire's aren't great anyway. So it's not like, I can say, we need a revamping. Our governor should be leading us. Leading us.
It looks like her does with this company.
No, they're not.
Their husband is.
Okay, let's get to the next question. Sam, this is for you. What happens to the smart child? Is this a dumbing down of American education?
My English? Let me do something further. Understanding what's happening. The students are no longer going to be equal, okay? So the smart student will be the dumb student, because they're all going to be equal. That's what they want, okay? The student that's slow will not progress. Everybody at the same level is what they're looking at. Let me bring something up a minute here. Why I do what I do. And this is the best way to do it. This is my granddaughter in the State House last week, sitting in my seat, because she visited her state capital. That's what you do it for, my great-granddaughter. Your great-grandchildren, that's going to be coming, for those who are younger than me. Okay? We're all younger. Understanding, okay? Yes, it is. But have fun.
Here's a quick question, and I don't know the answer to this. I've heard that the name of Common Core is being changed to mask its true identity. Is this true?
Yes.
What is it now?
College and career readiness. As a researcher, this is so common. You mentioned competency-based education. It was first called mastery learning, then it was called outcome-based education. Now it's called competency-based education. As it gets thrown out of states and out of school districts, got to change the name so nobody pays attention. It's called standards-based education in Maine. I talked to the governor of Virginia a few years ago, and I said, you guys just got rid of your outcome-based education, your competency-based education, or I figured remember they called it back then. Oh yeah, we got rid of that. It doesn't do anything. There's no statistical evidence that shows that it increases or improves academic achievement. It's one of my main goals. Competency-based education, I want to tell you something really, really quick. I'm a Bedford resident, and a couple years ago, there was a book brought before the school board. It's called Nickel and Dime, Why We Cannot Make It in America. It was being used in a personal finance class. It was written by a social activist. Her biggest criticism from people who evaluated her is that she promotes Marxist ideology. So she wrote a book, Why We Can't Make It in America, and this was being used in a personal finance class in Bedford, and I happened to live there. So they took it to the school board based on the religious parts, that Jesus was a wine-guzzling vagrant, that was in the book. They took it to the school board, the parents, who were very courageous. And when I got up and spoke, I said, this was based on a competency. They chose this book because it was based on a competency in a personal finance class where you think your kids are learning how to balance a checkbook, how to calculate simple interest. No, this is the problem with competency-based education. It's outcome-based education, it's workforce skills, and these are, the biggest criticism of this is it changes values, attitudes, and beliefs. I give you no better example than what happened in Bedford. That is the best. When that happened, I thought, well, now I've got my example to take to everybody. This is competency-based education. This is what people for the last 20 years have been saying. Don't do this. Don't do this. All it does is it's a focus on changing attitudes, values, and beliefs. When you are presenting this kind of she had no credentials in personal finance, none. Okay, this is what they were using, and we were told this was based on a competency. So I don't want to go too much.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about, I know a lot of people are curious about this, but it didn't come in through any questions, so I'm going to use my prerogative as moderator to ask it. I'd like you to talk a little bit about what actually happens in the data mining, especially with very young children. I've heard some stories about some of the questions that are asked of children, and it's a little terrifying, and I'd like you to just elaborate on that if you can, please.
I'll start here. I think that when Anne Marie was talking about the competency part of it, it's an ideological thing that's happening with the data mining. And I think that from what I have read, there are so many veins of it. There's so many veins of it. There's sociological veins, there's religious veins, there's political, where you stand on the political spectrum veins. And I just can't.
And these are part of the questions.
Part of the questions that the children get asked and how they respond then goes into the data mining. And what I don't understand is how can we know with all this question, because everything's assessment, right? And this is nothing but an assessment nightmare. For teachers that do like No Child Left Behind, this one is like on steroids assessment. All assessment, all the time. How do we know? And we don't, because I've seen some of these questions. These younger students that are being asked questions that are above their brain age ability to understand. And yet they're being asked to answer or to talk about these things that they aren't even developmentally ready to answer. That's the thing that scares me. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the brain's just not ready yet to deal with some of that stuff. That's what frightens me about it.
Give them some examples.
Surveys. They survey students a lot. Look for surveys.
But how do you know this happens in your school? I
Sometimes
have a first grader and a third grader. Who are lucky they can tell me what they did in math class. How are they going to tell me
I would
if
start by
someone
asking.
asked if mom is a Republican or Democrat, or if we go to the Catholic Church, or if we go where? So where are these questions being asked, and how am I going to know if my first grader, who won't be able to tell me anything,
Right.
my third grader,
I'd ask the school, I would start by asking the school what kind of, show me all the surveys, survey puts in writing, survey.
And just because my child takes the survey, their information now goes into that data mine?
Yeah.
Because I think it's on psychological profile.
If it's that kind of thing that they're doing in part of the Common Core. But I didn't trust my own school anymore, right? Not that they're bad people, they just believed what was being given. I took my son aside and we had a talk about anything that came in through him that he felt was above and beyond what he had seen before. If there were questions, I educated my child. I did at 12.
I mean, you might overreact. I mean, I got an email from somebody whose kids were working on a genealogy project. And, you know, I kind of looked at it and I thought, well, there's a lot of personal information being asked, but, you know, is this really just a genealogy project? You don't, you know, I don't want to scare people, oh my gosh, you can't do any of the, you know, things. You just have to use your logical sense. I would start by, you know, letting the school know that you need to be informed if there's any surveys done. If they're not going to, this is what we ask Manchester, are you going to post the non-academic questions that are going to be administered on this international test? We want to know why don't we show something? If they're not academics, who cares if they're shown ahead of time? Massachusetts, their MCAS test, they would post every time the test was given. So parents could look at it. You could see what your child was asked in Massachusetts based on those standards that they were using. So there has to be some transparency, but we're still trying to get information on whether that's even going to be posted. That's what we try to answer. That's right.
We don't own the test. The department has to release them after the test is given, but we don't own the test. In Pelham, there was 4 surveys. This is one of them. An irate mother came, if you'd like to come and look at that. She had 4 surveys for her child this year so far. And they're all behavioral questions to try to figure out whether they ADHD or any behavioral disorders, and who knows what else is in there.
I know of 2 schools that have, and my son actually participated a year ago in one in Alton, where the parents were not given the results of this survey, excuse me, and it was about drugs and sex and you know, friends and bullying and all this other stuff, and that was given to UNH. We found it through a right to know on UNA that information was given and done by UNH. And whatever data mining they have, I suppose it's off in there. But you know, interesting, just quickly, when my son was told about this, he did his test last year. And this is something that makes you say you have to pay attention. Now, he did something he shouldn't have done, and I did address it. But he took his assessments last year, and he snuck his phone, and he took this. Now, he wasn't supposed to. And I told him, you know, Christopher, you shouldn't have done that. Inside I was thinking, thank you. You know what that test said on the bottom? And I couldn't believe it. What you did is, it said Common Core, right in the bottom of the text, right? Because he knew that I was starting to be, you know, Common Core conscious. And I went to my school and I asked them, and do you know they denied up and down they took the Common Core test? I said, but I have a picture. Now we went to a meeting at my school where this was, I think, before we took the vote. So we have all kinds of parents there, the whole board's there, you know, the administrative people. I brought it up again because I thought, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I got that wrong somehow. I started to doubt myself, and so we brought it up at the meeting. And the principal again said, no, we had no Common Core testing. And so I said again, but you know what, I have a picture. And what did she say to us? She capitulated, and she admitted that they did do a test run of the Common Core.
This is still a research project. When my daughter was doing psychology in Princeton, they gave them funding, so when you went out and you did a survey, you paid the participants, you gave them informed consent, they gave you permission, and you paid them for their research. $5, $10 an hour, whatever it was, you got paid. Our kids are not being paid. Pearson is going to make big bucks. bucks on this. Last year was a pilot, this year is a field test, next year it's still not validated. Where's the informed consent? There's no money, there's no signatures from parents. They're not even telling them that your kids are guinea pigs.
You question the DOE.
Okay, I'm gonna do something fast now, because we got wrapped up very soon. I have a card, I think this is Mike Rogers in the back?
Yes.
Is this from you? You want me to mention a reference book? Is this yours?
That is correct. It
Yes,
came
it's
out last
called
week.
Credentialed to Destroy
Mm-hmm.
is the name of the book by Robin S. Eubanks, EUBANKS, recommended by Mike Rogers.
Credentials to destroy?
Credentialed
Oh, I'm sorry.
to destroy.
To destroy. I have 4 cards left, and in the interest of doing a rapid round here, I'm going to give one to each of our panelists, and then we're going to wrap things up. And I'm sure if anybody wants to stay around, they really kick us out of here at 9 o'clock, but they like us to try to wrap up at 8:30. So if you want to hang around, and if people want to ask individual questions, but here we go, rapid round. Doris, this is going to be for you. Could you please repeat with whom Common Care originally met and decided to implement the program in New Hampshire? Was it their authority to do so?
Well, they said it was state-led, and if it was state-led, we would own it. It's copyrighted by Achieve Inc. If they've got the copyright, we didn't do it. So our Board of Education, July 8, 2010, voted 4-1 on a draft, the final draft of the standards to accept it in order to do a race to the top application. They wanted to get money. This is why all the states did. This is why Massachusetts gave up the best in the country standards. They wanted money. They are trading your child's future for money.
Okay.
She said it was the Department of Education.
New Hampshire Department of Education.
Board of Education.
Yes.
Point to the Board of Education.
And
Okay,
Lions
Anne
voted
Marie,
yes.
this is yours. I'm cutting you off because we're on a tight schedule. Do you think the use of informational texts is a way to indoctrinate the students to a certain way of thinking?
Yes, in general. And I'll give you an example. When I went and visited one of the schools, I was flipping through the book, and sure enough, I heard these kinds of criticisms, and I'm looking through the book, and I'm seeing, okay, well, they're going to learn about the solar system. I don't like the solar system. That sounds good. And then there's a page on Cesar Chavez, who is a laborer, and so where's the alternate? This is 5th grade. I'm flipping through the pages and I read a story about how this little boy was going to rally the kids and try to pass a helmet law. This is what I'm seeing, and Angela started seeing this call to political action through these exercises. And in the back of the book, a little bit about grammar. And that's one of my biggest concerns, as these kids are getting to college and they're having to write, they don't know proper grammar. Yes, I think in general, this is, we're seeing this in Manchester. Rich Gerard looked at the curriculum guidelines that the teachers developed for Manchester and this persuasive writing. And as he's looking at this, it's write a paper to basically lobby against your parents for something that you wanted and they denied you. That was an exercise, okay? And so he went on a rant on his radio station and said, where is the letter that the child's supposed to write that shows respect for their parents? Those kind of things. So, yeah, we're starting to see that. I think it's very disturbing. And so look at the materials, look at the books. I wish I could say this is the agenda of Common Core. A lot of this has been happening prior to that. So, we need to be honest about that. I guess, from my perspective, I wanted something better. I want, when Satsuki and Milgram were chosen, I thought, great, hopefully they'll say, this is great, you can run with this, and make it truly voluntary. It's not voluntary, it's very coercive. And then maybe, the school district could go with it. It's not what we got, and that's my biggest problem with it.
Thank you. Sam, this one's for you.
Sure.
If we're changing testing with Common Core, will it favor public schools and knock out the home schools?
It'll affect homeschoolers also, by the way,
And private schools?
and private schools. Let me interject something for a minute, so everybody understands what bothers me, not only Common Core, but Diane mentioned something about 1956, but I remember 1962. It was called the California Map. Remember the California Map?
Yes.
Little boy, he's 12 years old, he's 15 now, asked me about 2 years ago what the speed of light was. 186,000 miles a second. He wanted to know what it was per minute. I said times 60. So I gave him a piece of paper. I had white paper, 2 lines. And a half. Thank you, California Map. It's still out there. The Common Core is going to be bad. It's going to be worse. Understand what they're talking about. Here's a little example. I'm going to just digress a little more. Students will have this kindergarten. This is kindergarten. It's on the internet. You can read all this stuff. You can see all their classes, what they're supposed to have. Students describe the physical world using geometric ideas, shape, orientations, spatial relations, and vocabulary. You think a 5-year-old really knows what spatial intersection is? Give me a break, all right? I mean, I do. I have the education. But identify and name describe 2 basic dimensional shapes such as squares, triangles, circles, rectangles, and hexagons. When did you learn hexagons? High school? This is kindergarten. No wonder why they come out of, with a 0 out of that class. Understand what your children are doing and your grandchildren. That's why I put that picture up there. The grandchildren. Understand what they're doing in school. Ask them to give you a question. See what they're doing, and then find out. Okay?
Thank you.
Be curious.
Very, very scary reports about the stress. And those of you who are working in the schools, teaching in the schools, and know people who are, I'm sure you've heard their stories about the stress. Okay, Jane, you've got the last question. It's an easy one.
Okay.
Where can I get more information on amended FERPA in 2011?
The FERPA information, it must be pretty easy because I just Googled it and I pulled up the whole thing last week. So I just put FERPA in Google and I had everything and I was able to go right to, there were other notes and resources there that moved me over to an article that was about FERPA that moved into it. So there's stuff in there if you just put FERPA in. And you can put in there, maybe something like FERPA amended, and then you'll see the actual amendment. But I had no problem getting the whole picture, just throwing that right into Google. I did want to make one little comment on Sam's question. Make no mistake, homeschoolers and private school, don't forget, once they align the SAT, right, to it, then no one's safe. Because then you have to teach to that, you know, it's not standard, right?
Oh, but one lovely, one mom gets in Ansel says, that's why we're not looking at the SAT.
Oh, well,
They're a little smarter than that.
There you go.
Why even consider that? Why even consider that when you know that these kinds of tests are counted for online? They're looking for something more.
David Coleman is what, the head of the Department of Ed?
David Coleman is the chief and the college board.
President of the Common Core. He's also in somewhere with the Common Core, and now he's the head of it. Chief Inc. Okay, and so he's rewriting those as we speak,
There was a bill put in for homeschoolers here by Representative J.C. Keene. We talked to her and we talked her into withdrawing it. She wanted to line homeschoolers to the Common Core with their curriculum and have Common Core annual testing. And we talked to her and said it was a little bit more complex than she thought, and we convinced her that the target that she wanted was these kids that were being arrested for being truant and stuff, that she ought to target them and make sure when they go to jail that they do their GED, when they get probation, they do their GED, when they get their disability checks, that they are following with their GED, something, but not picking up homeschoolers.
GED is now Common Core aligned in the right.
So that bill was pulled, and homeschoolers are off free.
We're going to have to wrap it up, folks. I thank you all so much for coming. Thank you especially to all the volunteers who are up to the next event. And the people
GrokTV.